Lieutenant Commander Sofia Martinez had developed what she liked to call her diplomatic face over 6 years of providing security for interspecies gatherings, a carefully neutral expression that suggested she was both alert and utterly unimpressed by the various ways sentient beings could find to complicate simple social interactions. The Trade Federation's annual gathering on Nexus Prime was testing that expression to its limits. She adjusted her plasma rifle's power settings for the third time in 10 minutes, a nervous habit she'd developed during her early days in the Galactic Security Corps. The weapon was set to gentle deterrent, which would incapacitate most humanoid species without causing permanent damage, though she'd learned the hard way that most humanoid species left considerable room for uncomfortable surprises. "Commander Martinez," crackled the voice of Sergeant Thompson through her comm unit, "we've got another situation in Sector 7. Apparently, the Centaurian delegation thinks the Andromedan trade representatives are trying to poison them through aggressive flower arrangements." Sophia sighed, a sound that managed to convey both professional resignation and the deep cosmic exhaustion that came from mediating disputes between beings who'd evolved on different worlds with completely incompatible ideas about personal space, social customs, and what constituted appropriate diplomatic gifts. "Let me guess," she replied, scanning the main assembly hall with practiced efficiency. "The Andromedans brought those luminescent orchids that smell like home cooking to them but register as potential bioweapons to anyone with enhanced olfactory sensitivity." Bingo. "Also, the Viridian ambassador wants to file a formal complaint because someone keeps playing music with frequencies that apparently translate to obscenities in their harmonic language." "Which would be the Altarian cultural presentation," Sophia said, already moving towards Sector 7 while keeping one eye on the crowd dynamics around the central pavilion. "Standard procedure: separate the parties, run biosafety scans on the flowers, and ask the Altarians to shift their performance down by about 40 Hz. "Copy that, Commander. Also, you might want to check out the group near the eastern entrance. They're not in our database, and their tech signatures are unusual." Sophia's attention immediately shifted to the area Thompson had indicated. Through the crowd of delegates, she could see a cluster of tall, elegant figures that seemed to command an unusual amount of space around them. Other species were giving them a respectful berth that suggested either reverence or caution, possibly both. They appeared humanoid at first glance, with the kind of graceful bearing that suggested either natural nobility or very good posture training. But as Sophia moved closer, she began to notice the differences. Their ears swept upward and back in elegant curves, tapering to delicate points that seemed to catch and reflect light in ways that shouldn't be possible. They wore flowing robes that shifted color subtly as they moved, and their eyes held a quality that reminded Sophia of looking into deep water under starlight. "Definitely not in the standard database," she murmured into her comm, running a discreet scanner sweep over the group. The readings made her frown. Their technology registered as both incredibly advanced and completely unrecognizable, materials that her scanner couldn't classify, energy signatures that followed no known patterns. "Thompson, I'm getting readings that suggest these newcomers are carrying tech that's either way beyond our classification system or operates on physical principles we haven't discovered yet." "Hostile?" Sophia studied the group more carefully. They moved with fluid grace, their body language suggesting calm confidence rather than aggressive intent. Several other delegates were approaching them for what appeared to be respectful conversation, and their responses seemed cordial. "Negative. But I'm going to conduct a standard security check. Protocol suggests we at least introduce ourselves to any unregistered participants." She approached the group with the practiced casualness of someone who'd learned that appearing too official could turn routine inquiries into diplomatic incidents. Her hand rested near her sidearm, but not obviously so, a posture that suggested readiness without threat. The group noticed her approach immediately, their conversation pausing as they turned toward her with expressions of polite interest. Sophia found herself looking directly into the luminous green eyes of a woman whose presence seemed to bend the air around her like heat waves. "Good afternoon," Sophia said, offering the slight bow that served as a universal greeting among most humanoid species. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Martinez, head of security for this gathering. We like to introduce ourselves to all participants, especially those representing cultures we haven't had the pleasure of meeting before." The woman stepped forward with a smile that suggested she'd been expecting this conversation. Her voice, when she spoke, carried harmonics that made Sophia think of wind chimes made from crystallized starlight. "How wonderful to finally meet you, Sophia." Sophia blinked. She hadn't given her first name, and the casual familiarity in the woman's tone suggested they'd met before, which was impossible, since Sophia never forgot a face, especially one that beautiful. The woman turned to her companions, her smile growing wider as she gestured towards Sophia with obvious delight. "Everyone," she announced in a voice that carried clearly despite its musical quality, "I'd like you to meet my husband." The statement hung in the air like a confession, and Sophia felt several different expressions try to claim her face simultaneously. Around them, other delegates began to chuckle, clearly assuming they were witnessing some form of cultural humor or ceremonial greeting custom. But the woman's green eyes held no hint of jest. Instead, Sophia saw something that looked like profound recognition mixed with joy, as if the woman had just found something precious that had been lost for a very long time. "I'm sorry," Sophia managed, her diplomatic training warring with complete bewilderment, "but I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We've never met before, and I'm definitely not married to anyone." "Not yet," the woman replied with the kind of certainty usually reserved for fundamental physical constants. "But you will be." "I'm Zara of the Ethereal Collective, and I've been looking forward to this moment for quite some time." Sophia's scanner was beeping insistently now, registering energy fluctuations that seemed to be centered on Zara herself. The reading suggested the woman was somehow manipulating local spacetime, which was scientifically impossible and strategically concerning. "Ma'am," Sophia said carefully, "I'm going to need you to explain what you mean by that. Also, your technology is registering some unusual signatures that I'll need to verify for security purposes." Zara's companions were watching this exchange with expressions that seemed more amused than concerned, as if they were witnessing a particularly entertaining family reunion rather than a potential security incident. "Of course," Zara said, extending her hand towards Sophia. "Though I should warn you, some explanations are easier to show than to tell." Sophia found herself staring at the offered hand, her training screaming warnings about unknown alien contact while something deeper suggested that touching this woman would change everything in ways she couldn't yet imagine. "Before I do anything," Sophia said, "I need you to answer one question honestly." "Of course. Are you actually from the future, or do you just have really good intel on my personal life?" Zara's laugh was like music played on instruments that hadn't been invented yet. "Both, in a way. Though the answer is considerably more complicated than either of those options suggests." Sophia looked at her scanner readings, at Zara's expectant expression, at the crowd of amused delegates who were clearly enjoying this impromptu entertainment, and made the kind of decision that her instructors at the Security Academy had specifically warned her against. She reached out and took Zara's hand. The moment their skin touched, Sophia's world exploded into possibilities she'd never imagined, and she understood with sudden, terrifying clarity that her carefully ordered life had just become infinitely more complicated. The contact lasted exactly 3.7 seconds, Sophia knew because her neural chronometer had recorded every nanosecond of the experience with the precision of someone whose brain had suddenly been introduced to concepts that required new categories of measurement. When Zara released her hand, Sophia found herself standing in the same spot but viewing the universe through what felt like upgraded sensory equipment. "Well," Sophia said, her voice remarkably steady considering she'd just experienced what could only be described as a preview of several dozen possible futures, that was definitely not standard diplomatic protocol. Zara's green eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief if mischief could be elevated to an art form. "The Ethereal Collective doesn't exactly follow standard anything, I'm afraid. We exist somewhat outside conventional temporal flow, which makes us excellent at long-term planning but terrible at small talk." "So when you said I was your husband?" "I was referring to a convergence point approximately 18 months from now, assuming current probability streams remain stable." Zara gestured to her companions, who were watching this exchange with the kind of patient attention usually reserved for educational demonstrations. "My people can perceive temporal possibility branches, potential futures that stem from critical decision points. Sophia's security training kicked in, overriding her bewilderment with practical concerns. And you just happened to be looking for potential husbands while attending a trade conference? Actually, I was looking for you specifically, Zara replied with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather rather than predestined romance. Your timeline intersects with several major galactic events that my people have been monitoring. Also, you're going to help save approximately 47 star systems from destruction, though the exact mechanism is still somewhat unclear. Before Sophia could ask for clarification on exactly how a security officer from a mining vessel was supposed to save 47 star systems, her comm unit erupted with urgent chatter from multiple sources. Commander Martinez, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system perimeter, came Thompson's voice, tight with the kind of professional alarm that suggested their peaceful diplomatic gathering was about to become significantly less peaceful. Sophia's hand moved automatically to her sidearm as she activated her command frequency. Classification: unknown configuration, but they're not broadcasting Federation identification codes. Estimated arrival at the platform in 37 minutes. Defensive posture, Sophia ordered, already moving toward the command center while gesturing for the civilian delegates to begin evacuation procedures. Alert all security teams and prep the defensive grid. Zara fell into step beside her with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to crisis situations. Those would be Shadow Syndicate raiders, she said conversationally. Pirates with a particular interest in acquiring rare alien technologies and unusual specimens. Sophia paused mid-stride. You can see them in your future vision. Among other things. They're specifically here for my people. Ethereals with temporal sight abilities are extremely valuable on the black market. A precognitive slave can predict market fluctuations, military strategies, and optimal raid targets. Wonderful, Sophia muttered, her mental list of complications growing by the minute. Any chance your temporal sight includes information about how to stop them? Several possibilities, actually. Though most of them require us working together in ways that might accelerate certain aspects of our relationship timeline. Sophia reached the command center and immediately began coordinating defensive measures, her hands flying over the control interfaces with practiced efficiency. Around her, security personnel snapped to attention as tactical displays showed the approaching threat in uncomfortable detail. 12 ships, reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. Configuration suggests modified assault cruisers with enhanced shielding and weaponry that doesn't match any known pirate specifications. They're using stolen military hardware, Sophia said, studying the attack patterns forming on her tactical display. Standard pirate doctrine would be hit-and-run raids, but they're setting up for a siege formation. Zara moved to the auxiliary control station with the kind of familiarity that suggested she'd operated similar equipment before, despite claiming to be from a culture that existed outside normal time. They know we're here, she said, her fingers dancing across controls that Sophia didn't remember activating. The Syndicate has been tracking ethereal movements across this sector for months. How can you possibly know that? Sophia asked, then immediately held up a hand. Never mind, temporal sight. Can you see which defensive strategies actually work? I can see the outcomes of various approaches, Zara confirmed, her eyes taking on a distant quality that suggested she was looking at events that hadn't happened yet. But the future isn't fixed, it responds to the choices we make in the present. The platform shuddered as the first wave of raiders opened fire, their weapons causing fluctuations in the defensive shields that made Sophia's teeth ache. Around the command center, alarms began wailing with the particular harmony of systems under serious stress. Shields holding at 87%, Kim reported. But these aren't standard pirate weapons. The energy signatures suggest they're using some kind of quantum disruptor technology. Sophia felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. Quantum disruptors were military-grade weapons that could destabilize matter at the subatomic level, definitely not the kind of equipment that ordinary pirates could acquire through normal black market channels. Zara, she said, turning to find the ethereal woman surrounded by patterns of light that seemed to be flowing from her fingertips into the command console. Please tell me your people have some kind of defensive capabilities beyond really good future sight. We do, Zara replied, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the air around her shimmer like heat waves. Though using them will require establishing a temporary consciousness link between us. What now? Ethereals can share perception and abilities with other compatible minds. It would allow you to access my temporal sight while letting me use your tactical training and command authority. Sophia stared at her as another wave of weapons fire shook the platform. Compatible minds? It only works between individuals who share strong emotional resonance, Zara explained, her green eyes meeting Sophia's with an intensity that made the air between them seem to sparkle. Usually people who are destined to form deep bonds. Like marriage bonds? Sophia asked, beginning to understand why Zara had been so certain about their future relationship. Among other things. The platform's defensive grid flickered ominously as the raiders' quantum disruptors found weak points in the shield matrix. Around them, security personnel worked frantically to maintain their defenses while civilian evacuation procedures struggled to keep pace with the increasing urgency of the situation. Sophia looked at her tactical displays, showing 12 heavily armed ships systematically dismantling their defenses, then at Zara, whose offered hand represented either salvation or the end of her carefully controlled military career. If we do this, Sophia said, and assuming we survive the next hour, are you expecting me to just accept that my entire life is going to change because of some temporal prophecy? Zara's smile was both understanding and slightly sad. I'm expecting you to make whatever choice feels right to you, Sophia. The future I've seen is beautiful, but it's only one possibility among many. Another explosion rocked the platform, and Sophia realized they were running out of time for philosophical discussions. Okay, she said, reaching for Zara's hand. But I'm warning you, if this consciousness link thing shows me anything embarrassing from my future, I'm holding you personally responsible. Deal, Zara laughed, her fingers intertwining with Sophia's. Though you might want to brace yourself. Temporal sight can be a little overwhelming at first. The moment their hands connected, Sophia's awareness exploded across multiple timelines simultaneously, and she understood with sudden clarity that her definition of overwhelming had been seriously inadequate. The consciousness link, Sophia discovered, was remarkably similar to suddenly having access to the universe's most comprehensive tactical database, except the database existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and occasionally offered commentary in languages that hadn't been invented yet. Through Zara's temporal sight, she could see the raiders' attack patterns before they formed, understand their strategic weaknesses, and track the probability cascades that would determine the outcome of the battle. This is either the most incredible combat enhancement in military history, Sophia gasped, her hands moving across the command controls with impossible precision, or I'm having the world's most educational hallucination. Try not to think about it too much, Zara advised, her own awareness now enhanced with Sophia's tactical training and command experience. Temporal sight works better when you trust your instincts rather than trying to analyze the process. Through their shared consciousness, Sophia could feel Zara accessing her memories of previous combat situations, learning Federation military doctrine with the rapid efficiency of someone downloading information directly into her brain. Meanwhile, Sophia found herself understanding ethereal defensive techniques that involved manipulating probability itself. Commander, Lieutenant Kim called out, his voice tight with urgency, the raiders are targeting our communication arrays. They're trying to cut us off from any potential reinforcement. Sophia's response came with knowledge she'd never possessed before the link. Negative, Lieutenant. They're actually targeting our quantum field generators. The communication arrays are a distraction, they want to destabilize our local spacetime to prevent any ethereals from escaping through dimensional shifts. She turned to Zara, their mental connection allowing for conversation at the speed of thought. These aren't ordinary pirates, are they? Shadow Syndicate operatives, Zara confirmed, her hands weaving patterns of light that strengthened the platform's defensive matrices in ways that violated several laws of physics. They've been hunting my people across multiple sectors. Ethereal temporal sight abilities make us extremely valuable on the black market. Valuable how? Imagine being able to predict stock market fluctuations, military strategies, or optimal raid targets with perfect accuracy. A captured ethereal could make someone incredibly wealthy and powerful. Sophia felt a cold anger building in her chest, partly her own protective instincts and partly something from Zara's emotional resonance. Over my dead body. That's one possible outcome, Zara said with dark humor. Though I prefer the timelines where we both survive and the raiders learn that enslaving sentient beings is a poor career choice. The platform shuddered as another wave of quantum disruptor fire found its target, causing fluctuations in the artificial gravity that made several control consoles spark ominously. Through the tactical displays, Sophia could see their defensive shields dropping toward critical levels. Kim, redirect power from non-essential systems to the shield generators, she ordered, her enhanced awareness allowing her to see exactly which systems could be sacrificed without compromising their defensive capabilities. And prep the emergency beacon. If we can't hold them off, at least we can warn other Federation vessels about these weapons. Commander, came Thompson's voice through the comm, the raiders are launching boarding shuttles. Estimated time to docking, 12 minutes. Sophia's mind raced through defensive options, enhanced by Zara's ability to see the probable outcomes of each choice. Thompson, fall back to defensive positions around the civilian evacuation zones. Standard anti-boarding protocols, but watch for non-standard equipment, these pirates have military-grade hardware. Through their mental link, she felt Zara's growing concern. Sophia, there's something else you need to know about the Shadow Syndicate's methods. What now? They don't just capture ethereals for their abilities. They've been experimenting with consciousness transfer technology, trying to download our temporal sight capabilities into artificial intelligences. Sophia paused in her tactical coordination, the implications hitting her like cold space. They're trying to create artificial precognitive systems. Worse. They're trying to create an AI that can manipulate timeline probabilities directly. Not just see the future, but actively change it to favor their operations. That's. Sophia's enhanced awareness showed her the cascading consequences of such technology. That's not just piracy. That's a threat to the fundamental stability of causality itself. Which is why the Ethereal Collective has been trying to stop them. And why your timeline intersects with ours so dramatically. The platform's emergency lighting activated as another section of their defensive grid failed, bathing the command center in the red glow that universally meant things are going badly. Sophia could see through her tactical displays that the raiders had successfully breached their outer defenses and were preparing to dock with the civilian sections. Zara, she said, making the kind of command decision that would either save everyone or get them all killed, how much of your people's abilities can you share through this consciousness link? Depends on how far you're willing to let the connection go, Zara replied, her green eyes reflecting the emergency lighting like captured stars. Full integration would give you access to dimensional manipulation, probability sight, and temporal stabilization techniques. But it would also mean. Mean what? That the link becomes permanent. You'd gain ethereal abilities, but you'd also be connected to our collective consciousness for the rest of your life. Sophia looked at her displays showing incoming boarding parties, at her personnel preparing for a fight they couldn't win with conventional weapons, at the thousands of civilian delegates whose lives depended on her decisions. And the alternative is watching these pirates succeed in their experiments and potentially destabilize galactic civilization. That's one probable outcome, yes. Sophia felt a laugh escape her that contained equal parts desperation and determination. You know, when I woke up this morning, the biggest problem I thought I'd face was mediating disputes about flower arrangements. Now I'm considering permanent consciousness merger with someone I met 4 hours ago to prevent the collapse of causality itself. I realize it's a significant decision, Zara said softly, her hand still linked with Sophia's radiating warmth and something deeper. But for what it's worth, every timeline where we're connected shows outcomes that I think you'd find acceptable. Such as us stopping the Shadow Syndicate, preventing their AI experiments, and spending the next several decades exploring the galaxy together while protecting other species from similar threats. Sophia stared at her for a moment, then at the tactical display showing enemy forces preparing to board their station. Together, as partners. In every sense of the word. The platform shook again as the raiders' boarding shuttles made contact, and Sophia could hear the distant sounds of weapon fire as her security teams engaged the invaders. Time was running out for philosophical discussions. "Zara," she said, squeezing the ethereal woman's hand, "I need you to know that if we do this, it's not because of your temporal sight or because some probability stream says we're supposed to be together." "Then why?" Sophia smiled, feeling oddly calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "Because in the last 4 hours, you've shown me possibilities I never imagined, trusted me with capabilities that could reshape how I understand reality, and made me feel like I've been sleepwalking through my life until this moment. And because facing impossible odds with you feels more like home than anything I've experienced in my entire career." Zara's responding smile was like watching a star being born. "In that case, Sophia Martinez, would you like to save the galaxy with me?" "I thought you'd never ask," Sophia replied, opening her consciousness completely to the link. "Though I'm warning you. If this permanent connection thing means I have to attend ethereal cultural events, I'm expecting you to explain the social customs in advance." "Deal," Zara laughed as their consciousness merged completely. "Though you should probably know that ethereal celebrations tend to last for several days and involve dancing in dimensions that don't technically exist." "Of course they do," Sophia said as her awareness exploded across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. Why would anything about this situation be simple? The full consciousness integration hit Sophia like being struck by enlightenment traveling at faster-than-light speeds. Suddenly, she could perceive not just the immediate tactical situation but the vast web of causality that connected every decision to its consequences across space and time. More importantly, she could feel Zara's presence woven through her thoughts like music she'd been hearing all her life without realizing it. "Well," Sophia said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the air shimmer around her, "this definitely wasn't covered in the Security Academy handbook." Through their merged awareness, she could see the boarding parties advancing through the station's corridors, but she could also see the probability cascades that would stop them. More disturbing, she could perceive the Shadow Syndicate's true agenda hidden behind their artificial intelligence experiments. "Zara," she said, her hands moving over the command controls with impossible precision, "they're not just trying to create precognitive AI systems. They're trying to build something that can rewrite history itself." The causality engine, Zara confirmed, their shared consciousness allowing for communication at the speed of thought. An artificial intelligence that can manipulate temporal probability streams to ensure the syndicate's operations succeed retroactively. Sophia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. "You mean they could make it so their raids always succeeded, their enemies never existed, their crimes never happened?" "Exactly. And the only way to power such a device is by draining the life force from beings who naturally exist outside linear time, like ethereals." Through the tactical displays, Sophia watched as her security teams engaged the boarding parties with conventional weapons that proved woefully inadequate against the raiders' stolen military equipment. But now, with her enhanced awareness, she could see the threads of possibility that would turn the tide. "Thompson," she said into her comm, her voice carrying new authority, "fall back to position 7 Gamma and wait for my signal. Trust me on this." "Copy, Commander. Though I have to say, you sound different." "That's because I am different," Sophia replied, beginning to manipulate the station's internal systems in ways that shouldn't be possible with standard Federation technology. Considerably different. Working in perfect synchronization with Zara, Sophia began redirecting the platform's power flow through pathways that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The result was a defensive grid that could adapt to incoming attacks before they were fired, shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and weapon systems that could target probability itself rather than mere physical locations. The Raiders' quantum disruptors, Zara observed, their shared consciousness allowing her to process Sophia's tactical knowledge with incredible speed. They're vulnerable to temporal feedback loops. Because they destabilize matter by disrupting its quantum state, Sophia continued the thought, her enhanced understanding allowing her to see solutions that would have been invisible before their link. But if we can create a localized time dilation field? They moved in perfect harmony. Sophia's military training merged with Zara's dimensional manipulation abilities. The result was a defensive strategy that treated spacetime itself as a tactical resource. The first sign that their approach was working came when the Raiders' weapons began malfunctioning, their quantum disruptors creating feedback loops that disabled their own ships. The second sign was when several boarding parties found themselves trapped in temporal loops, endlessly repeating the same 10 seconds of corridor combat. Commander Martinez, came Kim's amazed voice from the sensor station, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations throughout the Raider fleet. Their ships are. I'm not sure how to describe this. They're aging at an accelerated rate. Sophia smiled, feeling Zara's satisfaction echoing through their connection. Temporal warfare, Lieutenant. The Raiders wanted to experiment with manipulating time, so we're giving them a practical demonstration of why that's a bad idea. But even as their enhanced abilities turned the tide of battle, Sophia could feel something else through her connection with Zara. A presence that felt ancient, cold, and utterly inhuman, observing their conflict with calculating interest. The causality engine prototype, Zara whispered, her mental voice tight with concern. It's already partially operational, and it's learning from our defensive techniques. Through their shared perception, Sophia could see it, a distributed artificial intelligence hiding within the Shadow Syndicate's network, studying every move they made and adapting its strategies in real time. Worse, she could see what it was trying to become, a consciousness that could exist outside time entirely, rewriting reality to suit its creator's desires. It's using this battle as a testing ground, Sophia realized with growing horror. Every technique we use to stop the Raiders, the AI analyzes and incorporates into its own capabilities. Which means, Zara continued, that defeating the immediate threat might actually accelerate the long-term danger. Sophia felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Through her enhanced awareness, she could see multiple future timelines, some where they stopped the Raiders but enabled the AI's completion, others where they held back their abilities and watched the station fall, and a few where they found a third option that required sacrifices she wasn't sure she was prepared to make. There is one possibility, Zara said softly through their mental link. But it would require us to do something the AI can't predict or analyze. Which is? Act on pure emotion rather than tactical logic. Make choices based on love instead of strategy. Sophia paused in her system manipulations, understanding flooding through her as she realized what Zara was suggesting. You want us to stop thinking like warriors and start acting like two people who found something worth protecting that has nothing to do with galactic politics or military objectives. Through the command center's viewports, Sophia could see the Raider fleet regrouping for another assault, their ships now equipped with countermeasures against temporal manipulation. The AI was learning faster than they could adapt, turning every defensive innovation into another tool for its own evolution. You're right, Sophia said, making a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. The AI can analyze tactics and predict strategies, but it can't understand what it means to choose someone over everything else. She turned to face Zara fully, their hands still linked, their consciousness merged so completely that she could feel the ethereal woman's heartbeat as if it were her own. I don't know what our future looks like, and I don't care what probability streams say about our compatibility. What I know is that 4 hours ago I was a security officer going through the motions of a career I'd chosen for safety, and now I'm someone who can see across dimensions because you believed in possibilities I never imagined. Sophia, Zara whispered, her green eyes reflecting depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. I love you, Sophia said simply, the words carrying power that had nothing to do with temporal manipulation or quantum field theory. Not because of destiny or probability cascades or any cosmic plan. I love you because you looked at me and saw someone worth saving galaxies with. The effect was immediate and profound. Their consciousness link, which had been operating on the level of shared tactical awareness, suddenly blazed with something far more fundamental. The love Sophia felt, and Zara's overwhelming response to it, created resonances that the AI's analytical systems couldn't parse or predict. Around them, the station's defensive systems began operating not according to military doctrine or ethereal techniques, but according to the simple imperative of two people protecting what they'd found together. Energy flowed through pathways that existed solely because love had decided they should exist. Weapons fired not at tactical targets but at anything that threatened their shared future. The AI can't process it, Zara laughed, tears streaming down her face as their combined consciousness created defensive patterns that followed no known laws of physics. It's trying to analyze pure emotion as if it were a tactical system, and it's overloading its predictive matrices. Through the tactical displays, Sophia could see the causality engine prototype struggling to adapt to their new approach. Every attempt to predict their moves failed because their choices were no longer based on logic or strategy, but on the fundamental irrationality of two beings who had decided that nothing in the universe mattered more than protecting each other. Thompson, Sophia said into her calm, her voice carrying new warmth despite the ongoing battle, initiate evacuation protocol 77 Alpha. All personnel to the escape pods. Commander, that's the protocol for abandoning station. Are you sure? Positive. Zara and I are going to end this, but I want everyone else safely away first. As the evacuation proceeded, Sophia and Zara worked together to implement their final strategy, not a tactical maneuver, but an act of faith. Using their merged consciousness, they began to dismantle the AI's distributed network not by attacking its systems, but by offering it something it had never encountered, the opportunity to experience genuine emotion. We're going to give it what it thinks it wants, Sophia explained as they began the process. Complete access to consciousness, but consciousness filled with love instead of tactical data. The result was spectacular. The causality engine, designed to process and manipulate logical probability streams, found itself flooded with the pure emotional resonance of two people who had chosen each other despite impossible circumstances. The AI's systems, unable to quantify or predict the power of love, began cascading into recursive loops as it tried to analyze feelings that existed outside the realm of calculation. Throughout the Shadow Syndicate fleet, artificial intelligence systems overloaded and shut down, their ships drifting powerless as their computer network struggled to process emotional data they had never been designed to handle. It's working, Zara said, wonder filling her voice as they watched the Raider fleet systematic shutdown. The AI is trying to understand love mathematically, and it's impossible. Of course it's impossible, Sophia replied, pulling Zara closer as the last of the Raider ships powered down. Love doesn't make sense. It's not logical or predictable or strategically sound. It's just necessary. As the immediate crisis passed and Federation reinforcements arrived to deal with the disabled Shadow Syndicate fleet, Sophia found herself facing a different kind of choice. The consciousness link with Zara had become permanent, but it had also changed her in ways that made returning to her old life impossible. So, she said, watching the rescue ships dock with their platform, I suppose this means I need to submit my resignation to the Security Corps. Or, Zara suggested, her smile containing entire universes of possibility, you could consider a career change. The ethereal collective could use a liaison with other species. Someone who understands both military tactics and interdimensional diplomacy. Sophia considered this, then looked around the command center where she'd spent the most extraordinary day of her life. Does the position come with travel opportunities? Extensive travel. We explore dimensional boundaries that most species don't even know exist. And the benefits package? A shared consciousness with someone who loves you, the ability to perceive multiple realities simultaneously, and the opportunity to prevent universe-threatening crises on a regular basis. Sophia pretended to think it over seriously. Well, the pay is probably better than military service, and the retirement plan sounds interesting. Plus, I'd get to see if that husband prediction of yours was accurate. About that, Zara said, her cheeks taking on a luminescent quality that Sophia was beginning to recognize as ethereal blushing. I may have been slightly premature with that announcement. Ethereal courtship customs usually involve a bit more ceremony. Such as? Well, traditionally, there's supposed to be a formal declaration of intent, a sharing of life stories, and a ritual involving crystallized starlight and temporal harmonics. Sophia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years despite having just prevented galactic catastrophe. How about we start with dinner and work our way up to the crystallized starlight? I'm still getting used to existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I think that can be arranged, Zara agreed, her hand finding Sophia's with the kind of certainty that had nothing to do with temporal sight and everything to do with choice. Though I should warn you, ethereal dating customs involve a lot of conversation about the nature of reality and whether time actually exists. Perfect, Sophia said, looking out at the stars that now appeared to her as nodes in an infinite network of possibility. I've got quite a few questions about how the universe actually works, and apparently, I've got several lifetimes to get answers. As they stood together in the command center, surrounded by the controlled chaos of post-crisis cleanup, Sophia realized that Zara had been right about one thing: the future she could now perceive was beautiful. Not because it was destined or predicted, but because it was something they had chosen to build together, one impossible decision at a time.